And don't trust anyone's advice if they haven't really got to know you as an individual, not just a list of symptoms that you're experiencing this week, but over the last months or even years. And, illness doesn't happen overnight. It's always a result of many different issues and, mostly lifestyle choices.
Welcome back to the Push Pause to Heal podcast. On this podcast, we explore health from the inside out, starting with foundations, connection, and the conditions that allow the body to heal. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Rodersheimer, and I am so excited to welcome this week's guest, Emma Tekstra. Emma is an actuary, corporate executive, author, and mother. She's on a mission to dismantle the illusion of health that's sold by today's profit-driven healthcare system. A global employee benefits leader turned outspoken advocate for functional medicine, Emma spent over 25 years consulting with Fortune 500 employers on health and HR strategies, designing benefits programs across continents, driving research, and innovating technologies that bridge the gap between data and human well-being. Emma launched the Get Off Pharma movement and helps employers and individuals move beyond symptom management to help create real health. I love that. Emma's work exposes a hard truth. Our healthcare system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Built to sustain chronic disease and pharmaceutical dependency, it fails to deliver real health. Well, welcome, Emma. You have such a great background, and I would love. Do you want to share us a little bit about your story? Because you know from an actuarial background, and how did you come to find this space of functional medicine?
Yeah. Well, I've always been interested in medicine. I actually wanted to be a brain surgeon, wanted to be a conventional physician when I was a teenager. It's actually my father taught me out of it. I was really fascinated with the brain. I'm still fascinated with the brain.
Yes.
I was particularly fascinated by autism, which was really uncommon back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward 20 years, my then 5-year-old son, that's my older son, was diagnosed with Asperger's and ADHD. And I'd done everything the pediatricians told me to do. We'd done all the shots, all the antibiotics, and he'd been getting sicker and sicker physically, and then had all these behavioral problems as well. And then I get this diagnosis, and then they say, well, he's probably never going to leave home, and he needs to be on stimulant medication for the rest of his life. And I'm like, that's when the red flags started flying. And I finally started researching. I'd been a really busy corporate executive, and I'd just been doing whatever the white coat told me to do. So. But my actuarial brain, so I ended up becoming an actuary, as you said, and my actuarial brain can take in a lot of data and, making all these different connections. So I began to see that all the medication and the pharmaceuticals we're giving people year after year is probably doing more harm than good overall. And my mum's a pharmacist, or a retired pharmacist now. Yeah, my first job as a 12-year-old was counting out pills in her pharmacy.
Interesting.
So it was really strange to really figure out that everything I thought I'd known was wrong. Yeah.
Well, and I would just say, thank you for being open-minded enough to be curious about it and to consider it, because I do think there's a lot of, you're taught something in school, and it's really hard to question what you've been doing for a lot of your life, right? So I think that's amazing that you were able to kind of look deeper in that, and hopefully your mom was okay with what you were doing.
Sometimes.
So from your perspective in working with larger systems, what's fundamentally broken about how we approach health today? And, we're spending more money on healthcare than ever, but we're getting sicker. What do you see as some of the issue there?
Well, I think we have to go back, nearly 100 years, a little bit to really understand it. And I cover some of this in my book. But, the doctor's role in society was beginning to change. So we have to kind of look back there. And before that, people used to avoid the doctor, and they'd use all sorts of remedies and home remedies and common sense as much as possible. But then we discovered microbes, right? And then there was this assumption that all microbes make us sick, which we now know not to be true. But then the large scale use of antibiotics, which was definitely saving lives in the 1940s. And so it led then to this trust in doctors. Oh gosh, they can cure these terrible infections. And then, we start to invent technology. So we got X-rays and MRIs, and all this new technology is really expensive. And so the only way that people could afford those kinds of technologies was health insurance. So that's when health insurance gets invented, and it enables you to pay this low monthly premium. It used to be really, really low now. But if you did get sick, then you'd have access to all this latest and greatest diagnostics and new treatment. But then whatever ailment you had, you'd want to opt for that treatment. That mentally you're thinking, well, I've already prepaid for it, so that's the treatment I'm going to use, right? So that's where we started with this idea that insurance and health plans start to dictate treatment decisions. And then Big Pharma, of course, they're sort of coming alongside this whole thing, and they see a wonderful business model, and they start putting out more and more products, and it just sort of ratcheted up from there. So now you've got the medical schools, right? And you've got a lot of it, a lot of money goes into the medical schools by Big Pharma. And so doctors, there's so much new stuff to learn, so many new drugs, so many new technology all the time, that there's really no time to learn about the critical importance of nutrition. That's, I'm sure so that's maybe a couple of hours. We'll teach you about that, and we're really focused on things like rickets and pellagra. That's a really serious deficiency in vitamin C and vitamin D3. Folks don't know that, but and they don't learn too much about the microbiome and how it gets really heavily damaged by antibiotics and the regular use of other pharmaceuticals now. And then you've got all this increasing specialization amongst doctors. More and more they're looking at the body as individual systems and not the amazing holistic organism it actually is, with the ability to heal itself if you give it all the right elements. And so we're no longer looking at the root cause of a given symptom. A doctor takes 10 minutes and they put a label on you, some sort of diagnosis, and then they open up their prescription pad to give you a given drug that's on an approved list for that given diagnosis. Yes. But a symptom is your body trying to tell you something. A headache is not your body trying to tell you it's deficient in Advil or Tylenol, right?
Definitely not. Well, that was just a really amazing summary of this kind of process, and so many. I didn't really see how the invention of insurance started. Like I now that makes a lot of sense. We needed to be able to, pay for these tests. And it did used to be an inexpensive, it was like a safety net, and it wasn't expensive. Nowadays it's outrageously expensive because the system is so set up in this way to where everybody just, you've got more medication and more medication. And this is a kind of a timely conversation. You bring up antibiotics, and that was the invention of antibiotics was a huge change in healthcare. And like you said, doctors were seen as these amazing healers because they could pass out these pills, which saved many lives, like so many lives, right? But now we're at a spot where the insurance companies have shortened the visit with your doctor. I was in primary care for 15 years, so I can speak to this myself. The visit is so short. The person comes in, and really, I think for the most part, the patients actually would like an antibiotic, because it's something to do. If you have a cold and you're told to wait 10, 12 days for it, it'll go away on its own. That's frustrating, right? Nobody wants to deal with that. So the patient's kind of like looking for that. And the doctor, honestly, this was the fastest way I could get out of that room and move on to the next patient would be to pass out an antibiotic. Now, I didn't do that. From the get-go, I was very, always kind of judicious with it, but it is an easy out. And my son has been sick. He's away at college, and he's been sick for a little over a week. Just it seems like a cold, but it's not going away. He's insisted, he thinks, well, maybe I have strep because my throat hurts. I said, okay, we sent him to he's not in home. So he went to a minute clinic and got tested for strep, and that was negative. And, he's saying, well, Mom, can't you just give me an antibiotic? And I said, well,
Oh, so
you
funny.
think that that's what you want, but in reality, like that it's not going to touch a virus, and it's going to wipe out your microbiome. And now we're going to deal with a whole bunch of other issues down the road. So this is a timely conversation because
Yeah,
it seems like the easy answer, right?
yeah,
So anyone listening, I hope there's a takeaway here to say like antibiotics are great for bacterial infections, and that's it. And if you don't have a bacterial infection, that antibiotic is doing you much more harm than good. And, that we start with allowing the body to try to take care of this on its own. So, and I know you're a big fan of functional medicine. I talk to my clients like, you need more sleep. You need to slow down, take a couple things off your list. The reason you feel so poorly when you're sick is because the body's producing cytokines and other things to slow you down. It's saying stop all of this and just rest. So, yeah, there's so much wisdom to that. So I thank you for that perspective. I think people today are overwhelmed. One expert says one thing, another says the opposite, and
yeah.
how do you make sense of all of that with your systematic thinking, and how can someone know who to trust?
I think simply I say trust your gut,
Mm,
do your homework, but trust your gut. Use your common sense and your critical thinking skills, which are in really short supply these days. So, does what that person's saying or giving advice, does that really sound like it's going to get at the root cause of what's going on in my body? And don't trust anyone's advice if they haven't really got to know you as an individual, not just a list of symptoms that you're experiencing this week, but over the last months or even years. And, illness doesn't happen overnight. It's always a result of many different issues and, mostly lifestyle choices that you make, every
exactly.
single day, week, month. I've got two kids in college, so I absolutely know their lifestyle. Not enough sleep, too much
Yes.
fasting, all that kind of stuff. But don't trust the company that's just selling one product, even if it's a natural product. And you look at all the ingredients and their vitamins and minerals, and that sounds really good. But you're an individual. Your body is unique, and what it's been exposed to over those last months, weeks, whatever, is very unique. And so what's going on in your body is unique, and there's no quick fixes. You have to
Mm,
give your body what it needs, and it will slowly heal itself, right? And
I
it's
love
usually
that.
the basics: really good nutrition, probably some high quality supplements. If
Hmm.
you're heavily deficient in something, or
Sure.
you can't get it from organic whole foods these days.
Right.
Movement, good sleep, removing toxins from your life. If you've got a sore throat, take some raw honey. It's
Yes.
naturally antibiotic. Do everything you can to avoid
Yeah.
drugs. But yeah, I think we know deep down. We've just got to think about it and start to learn. You develop this over time. Learn to
Yeah.
listen to that voice inside your head
Yes.
when you're listening to
That's
whatever
so
they're telling you.
powerful. And I think we've kind of outsourced that
Yeah,
because now
absolutely.
there's so many ways to research, whether it's, Google, or you've got AI, or, podcasts and books and all like there's so much out there that we forget that we're the ones, like we can actually ask ourselves,
Yeah.
what do I think I need here? Or what feels right to me, instead of giving that power away to an outside source. So I love that. And I work with women who feel like they're doing everything right, but something's still not off. Still feels off. It still isn't. They don't feel like themselves. So from your lens, can you say like, what do you think might be missing there?
Well, I think firstly, it might be something unique going on in their body, that they hadn't really considered. So maybe there's an underlying infection,
Mm,
Lyme, Epstein-Barr, maybe a clogged up liver. So they're just simply not detoxing. That's all
mm,
staying inside them. Maybe they've got a damaged gut, so they're not absorbing all the good nutrients they're taking in. And if all that's been addressed, I think the next thing I'd say is mindset. How are
mm.
you doing with your stress and your outlook in life?
Yes.
Mindset is really huge. Not only with your thoughts around your lifestyle, but are you telling yourself, I'm a person with X diagnosis? I've got this, I've always been overweight and nothing's gonna work, or I've been doing the same healthy routine for 3 months and nothing's changed. You got to get rid of these sort of negative kinds of thoughts and think about how amazing your body is, and how it has the ability to heal itself. Make every mouthful of nutrient dense food just look amazing to you, and visualize how your cells are going to be doing the happy dance when they receive it. And by the way, if you're not looking forward to eating that nutrient dense food, then you need to take a cooking class or something. I'm a huge foodie, love food. And I love cooking amazing food that feeds my cells and tastes really good as well. But if that's not your problem, I think maybe it's just the stress, in your life. I think women, take on way too much. And it just might be all those outside factors that are just, your body is just in this a fight mode. I've got to do all these different things. So I'm juggling the job and the house and the kids and the husband, and taking some me time feels like a luxury, that I can't afford, and slacking off, I'm
Yes.
slacking off if I take that. I really know this struggle. I've struggled with an underactive thyroid, for many years, and it affects all sorts of bodily symptoms. But for me, stress is the number one factor, and it affects how I'm doing. I think our super busy lives, keeping all the balls in the air,
Yes.
affects us at the cellular level. So we need to find a way to let go and let God, as the saying goes.
I love it. You and I are very similar, because I would say stress is the thing that I was doing all the other things, but I didn't see the stress piece of it until I found that I couldn't heal my arthritis. And that is something I have to really lean into. And I think, so many areas of our life, we can push more, do more, research more, and we get something out of that, right? Like, I know it served me well to get me through medical school to do all of that. But when it comes to creating health, it's not something you can always push or do, or it's not necessarily a more problem, right? Sometimes it's often like you need less.
Yep.
Right. And space and quiet and room to, like, take a pause and let your body calm down. So I appreciate that so much. Did you find your health journey through your sons as well? Like, as you were learning for him, you were learning what to do for yourself? And
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I
yeah.
talk about this in my book, my kid's father, we actually got him diagnosed in his like mid 40s that he has Asperger's as well.
Okay.
And, we didn't know. But for me, thyroid issues, I had food sensitivities, I had all sorts of different things going on. And I've been reminded with a stressful period now and some joint pain that I've got, that years and years ago when I was going through a really super stressful time, this is more than 15 years ago now, some doctor thought I had lupus and he wanted to put that label on me and started saying, well, you need all these anti-inflammatories and this and that and the other thing, and that would have just gone down the road to autoimmune conditions. And I was like, that was the last conventional doctor I ever saw. That was 15 plus years ago, and that was all around when going through with my son, who's now in college. He's a junior in college, the older one that was diagnosed. But absolutely, and so it's just lifestyle. It's entirely lifestyle. It's natural approaches, and as I say, stress is number one.
Yeah.
And as soon as my stress starts taking off, I feel those aches and pains start to come back.
Yeah. Our bodies are so wise at reminding us. They're like, hey, listen up here. You're going off kilter. So it's your son's doing well. You were told he might not leave the house, and now he's away at college.
Yeah,
so.
he is doing phenomenal. He's doing mechanical engineering,
Wow.
and aerospace at a major 4-year college. He's got a really serious girlfriend. He's doing amazing, and he looks after his health himself now. It took the first year in college, he went way off track, and he, wasn't following. He's gluten free and dairy free and takes vitamins. He wasn't doing any of that as a freshman, and he got everything kind of backtracked, and he got bad. He couldn't focus. He was a mess, and it took that for him to realize, oh, all those things mom's been trying to get me to do, they actually help my body. And so now I'm super thankful, because now he does it out of choice, and he looks after his body himself, and he knows
great.
if something's going wrong, why it is.
Yeah,
And he does struggle with anxiety. It's part of the Asperger's. He's
sure.
very overwhelmed, and an engineer. He's
Oh, he's
leading
got a lot going on.
on a team. He has a lot going on, but he recognizes it, and so he'll have heart palpitations, and he'll like freak out, like I'm having a heart attack, and it's just anxiety. And so, are you taking your vitamin? He takes these fantastic vitamins, which are brain vitamins.
Yeah.
Have you? Oh, I might not have taken them for a week. So yeah, but he's
Yeah.
doing phenomenally. He's doing
Well,
really well.
that's what every mom is looking for, is the point where their child decides to do the good things
Yeah,
for themselves. So,
yeah.
A plus job to you, Miss Emma, on raising him that way. Um, I'd be curious to ask you, so you've studied behavior change and health outcomes. Why is it so hard for people to actually change, even when they want to, or even when they know what to do? What do you
Yeah.
see that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's mindset again, right?
Mm,
It's that quiet voice inside our heads, either telling us we can't do it,
mm,
or maybe we're just justifying something,
yeah.
like my son. My mum didn't know what she was talking about, but or we justify, oh, I can just eat that fast food. It's just this one time, and that ends up upsetting the routine completely. Or I'll just skip a walk today because it's bad weather, or my knees are hurting, or something like that. I think we like to take the easy road.
Hmm.
That's just human nature. We want instant gratification instead of slow and
Yes.
steady, which will ultimately win the race.
Yes.
I think if we have plateaued, I think we probably do want to change up the routine a little bit, but just
Hmm.
don't, when you change it up, don't revert to bad. To say, well, all that good stuff didn't work, therefore I'll go back to eating bad and not moving and all
Yes.
those kinds of things. Just change it up, but in a good way.
Hmm.
Pick a different kind of a movement to do. Pick, some, eat, change it up. Take a food class. Change it up, but don't revert to bad, and don't listen to that voice.
Sure.
Justifying. I don't need to do this. It won't make that much difference.
And remembering too, I think that it's day to day, every day is a new choice, a new
Yeah,
start. So
absolutely.
if you do have a day where you didn't make the right
Yeah,
choice,
yeah,
that's not the time to
yeah,
throw in the towel. It's you just say, okay, today wasn't what I wanted it to be. We'll
yeah,
start again.
yeah.
You brought up another topic that I think is so interesting. Our lives in America today, or most of the civilized countries around the world, are so easy. Everything's become easy. And, for up until a point that was really helpful, is we had all these new, when we used to have to farm or hunt or all of that, that was a lot of work and really tiring. So we've made some progress in a lot of ways. We don't carry our water from the stream but life has gotten so easy now that we're not used to any struggle.
Yeah,
And some things we need a little bit of hard in our life to grow, right? So just like exercise, you have to do something that's a little bit of a struggle, and then your body gets stronger. Or picking the healthy food that you're going to cook in your own home versus eating out, like that's harder,
yeah.
but there's so much benefit to it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but we've overcome so much difficulty that we've gone too far.
Absolutely, it's the modern conveniences that I
Yeah.
think have just destroyed our health.
Hmm.
I think back to when they were planning for Mars, to the space expeditions to Mars. They have these domes, and they have people living in these domes
Yes.
to try and practice what it'd be like living on Mars. And they were trying to grow food, and they'd have all these plants and trees, but they kept dying, and they're like, what is going on? It's because they had no weather.
Mm.
Weather blows plants and makes them stronger. And we're the same way. We need some of those challenges, like you say, just to make us grow stronger. So hard is good.
Yes, yes. Yeah, a quick side story. I have a client who she's probably in her 60s, and she said, every time they go on a trip, her and her husband love to travel. He wants to like carry her suitcase for her. And I've taught her to say, nope, I'm going to carry my suitcase because that's going to keep me
Yeah,
stronger. So yeah, it's these little things you don't
yeah,
even think about.
yeah.
Well, Emma, you talk about, trying to move away from a pharmaceutical driven type of care. What does that look like in real life? Somebody who's, maybe, because a lot of my listeners probably do take some pharmaceuticals and they've served a purpose. And so we're not advocating everybody go stop their medications, right? But if somebody's interested in starting to make a shift that way, what would your suggestion be?
Right, absolutely. So don't stop cold turkey. Yeah, medications change how the body works, and when you stop it, it might not be ready to pick up the slack. But I think root cause medicine is looking at every aspect of your life, as we've said. So it's like, not just this week, but going back a while. And so, what you eat and drink, what toxins you've been exposed to, how much you move, how much you sleep. And it'll look at not just the handful of high level biomarkers that a conventional doctor will look like. It'll look at your genetic profile, nutrient deficiencies, we've said, food sensitivities that you might have. It might require a stool sample to kind of see what's going on with your microbiome. There'll be a lot of lab work to start with. And I know that sounds like it'll take, a long time to do. It's a really long doctor's visit, and that sounds really expensive. And we've already said it's really expensive. We can't afford it. Well, this is the crazy thing that makes me so frustrated when I'm dealing in the corporate world, because yes, the upfront expense may be more. Maybe you're spending an hour with a functional medicine doctor. Maybe you're doing a lot more testing, but then the treatment is a fraction of the cost of meds. I think the other thing that insurance has done in this country is that people don't realize how much some of these medications cost. It's such a waste of money. An autoimmune drug, for example, is $30,000 a year or more. I mean, it's ridiculous. Those GLP-1s like Ozempic that everybody's, crazy about right now, not much cheaper than that.
No.
It's a ridiculous amount of money, and they're really not curing any of the underlying problems. So you do all of that testing. Okay, sounds expensive to start with. You might have to take some high quality supplements. Hopefully you're not taking any medications, or we can wean you off the medications. So maybe that's $100 a month for really high quality supplements. Maybe even $200 a month, right? But you're getting your health back. And then, you're not going to need any doctor's visits and any ongoing testing to make sure the medications aren't destroying your liver or your kidneys or something. I get really frustrated with insurance companies and company health plans that don't cover functional medicine. It just doesn't make business sense. Your members will get really healthy in the future, and your future claims will fall. I mean, that's what I do now, essentially. That I'm out there flying this
You work
flag.
with the corporations trying
Absolutely,
to, yes.
corporations, insurance companies.
Yes.
Wake up, guys! This
Thank
makes
you.
business sense for you.
Yes, thank you for having that, avenue, because they need to hear it, and those of us practicing day in and day out don't have the time to go, to be doing that. But that is where the big change for our country will come, is when the higher ups in these bigger organizations make some change. I'm going to back you up though, because what I would add a prior starting point to your starting point with the labs, and I would just say is the lifestyle. So, in my practice, we start with Health Begins Here, which is a lifestyle program. And what we do is we help clients clean up their nutrition, get their sleep, work on their stress, and gets the proper amount of movement. And the course of 3 months' time doing that, we see a 63% reduction in symptoms. Yep. And that is the best way to save money on your pharmaceuticals and even your supplements. We often, if we do get to the testing phase, we often don't need nearly as many tests or supplements because things have just cleared up so much. So yeah, I think so. Don't forget that little piece when you're talking to the insurance companies and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You use this term, health sovereignty. I would love to know, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think it's just not handing your health over to the guy or gal in the white coat. I mean, you might wear a white coat, but I mean, for the most part, a conventional doctor. I mean,
sure.
Whoever. I mean, even if it is a functional medicine doctor, by the way, I mean, don't automatically even just take everything they say. I mean, you can learn a lot, but still, you've got to take ownership. You're an individual with a unique body. You're not a statistic. Learn about your body, what it needs, what works for you or doesn't work for you. And you don't need to be good at biology or chemistry. You just need to be discerning, and you do need to be open to learning a little bit. You do need to learn a little bit, because that's how you learn what is helping you or not helping you. even the functional medicine doctor isn't living inside your body.
Right.
So you have to take ownership yourself. That's the health sovereignty, and always ask questions, always push back on any, professional, use your critical thinking skills. But yeah, it's hard. It's a hard thing, right?
Yes.
Learning some of this, learning a little bit, how my body works. There's plenty of ways that a layman, I'm not an MD by background. And so when I'm working with employees and individuals, like in my writings, I'm trying to explain things in a layman's terms. So, I'm not good at biology or chemistry, but I do need to understand,
Sure.
how some of those nutrients, what they're doing to my body. And if I've got this kind of symptom, well, that might be a deficiency in this or that. Because, yes, I mean, fantastic if you can afford to work with a functional medicine doctor. But to your point, you just need to clean up your food and your environment and your toxins and how much movement. There is a lot you can do by yourself before you even need to, even go to a functional medicine doctor.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the word ownership, because I think, again, it's like we've just walk in the door and we give our health to somebody else to figure out. And it's kind of like that, the story with the antibiotic here, just fix me, just give me the pill, mom, like, no, that's not it. That's what can you do for your body? Are you getting enough sleep? And have you slowed down? Have you tried the honey, or gargling with salt water if your throat hurts, all these kinds of things. But ownership, it implies responsibility. And I think sometimes we don't want responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah. And but I would say with responsibility and ownership comes a whole lot of power, and in a good way. A power to take charge of your health, to have a different health outcome than most Americans are having or going to have if we stay on this trajectory. So I don't know about you. I would guess, Emma, you and I are on the same page here, but I plan to age healthfully and well, and I don't plan to, live in a nursing home and be dependent on my children. I'm going the other direction, and I think that's what can come from responsibility and ownership, and then the power ultimately. So excellent. Yeah, and is there anything else? Any practical takeaways if someone's I think we kind of got into that a little bit, but anything else that deeper that you wanted to share around your work, or that we can, a couple last thoughts for the listener around, maybe some of our listeners are heads of a corporation and they want to think about doing something differently. What would you say to that person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the role of employers is huge, right? And I think it's something like 80 million people in the US get their healthcare through their employer. And their health plan is going to dictate, their treatment. So if you're an employee, say to your employer, hey, could we get functional medicine included in our plan? Or, and there's a lot of great solutions out there now, and a lot of employers are offering them. You might not even be familiar with this, but there are a lot of startup companies that for $200 a month, you can get your employees access to functional medicine. They have a nutrition coach. They have an app that tracks their food and their supplements and these kinds of programs, and they're phenomenal. And I help some of these companies as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, so if you're an employee, mention this to your employer. But what I don't see, and what's the other part of my work now, is they're sort of advertised as wellness programs.
Yes.
You've got diabetes. Yeah, you could go conventionally and take all these drugs, or we've got this program over here that can help reverse your diabetes, and it becomes optional.
Yeah.
And so the employees see that as optional. What I'd like to see employers do is make that the start and say, you have to do this before you can do anything else for any ailment that's not an emergency or an acute condition. I think that's what most people don't realize. I mean, anything, functional medicine. And some of the people that I meet, especially in the corporate world, they see functional medicine for the fairly healthy, and we're just optimizing your health. And what I want people to understand, it's for anything that is not a current emergency, like you're in a car accident, or it's so acute you need really immediate attention because it's life or death. Anything else that is going on, any other ailment, if you've been diagnosed with something, it's something like people ask me, what percentage of ailments or something in the health plan, conditions in the health plan could be covered by functional medicine, and I'm like, 80 to 90% probably, maybe
Absolutely.
even more in some. Anything. It's a way of thinking about health.
Mhm, mhm.
It's not a program. And so that's something else. If you are an employer and you've got employees, please look into this. It's really going to help you from a business perspective as well, because your healthcare costs are going to go down. That's
Sure.
think of it.
Yes, absolutely. So, Emma, you tell us about how somebody could find your writings and reach out to you to if they did want to work with this in their company.
Yeah, well, my home base is basically my website, so emmatekstra.com with a
Okay.
K.
Okay.
And yeah, you'll find I've got online courses for employers, just super low cost, and I lay this all
Nice.
out. I've got my book. I'm in the middle of my second book, which is actually about raising kids. So
Oh,
applying all
great.
of this to raising kids from sort of 0 to 18. And then I have a weekly newsletter, so you can sign up for that as well. So
I love that. We'll link to your website in the show notes, and that's excellent. I think I know so many in the functional medicine space who become a coach or a practitioner or provider because of either their own health challenge like myself or a family member's health challenge. And you've gone in a different direction. This is very enlightening, and this perspective of somebody's got to be working on these insurance companies and the big corporations. And so I'm so grateful for all the work you're doing in the world. So grateful to you. So I think that's a great way to wrap up. If do you have any last minute thoughts?
no, no,
Okay. All right. I'm glad we covered everything. I think this was perfect. And if today's podcast resonated with you, please help us share it. Please help Emma get her word out. If you know somebody who does own a corporation or is working directly with insurance companies, let's spread the word that functional medicine is an option and we can help spread healing and do things in a different way. Thank you, Emma, for being on our show today. And I think this is going to land in a different way for a lot of people.